Hey guys, you may be bored of seeing me on the same studio setup every time, so I thought of making this video in a quite different way. I'm just gonna roam in my home and do this video. So I'm not sitting in a closed room so that I could not assure that this audio will be totally great. So please use your headsets to watch this video. So what is this video actually on? Last week on Instagram I posted some of the before after pics of my Lightroom editing, where there were some dumb pics in my mobile which I made them into some Instagram hitters. So many people wanted to know how I did that, what is the technique I followed to make such a transformation of the images. So I thought of sharing it with you. So I'm actually using the Lightroom Mobile for this. Most of the pics taken in my mobile or edited in Lightroom, that is Lightroom Mobile app, and yes, you can also make wonders with it. So this video will help you if you are new to editing, and even if you are using editing a long time ago, you may not know the reason of using some of these options like exposure, contrast. You don't know what it actually means, right? So those kind of steps you will learn in this video. Now let's get into the video and let's see how to make wonders with Lightroom Mobile. First, I'm importing a photo into Lightroom Mobile and I'm going to show all the options present in Lightroom. I'm going to tell you what all the difference they make so that you'll get an idea why you do these slider things in Lightroom. Not only in Lightroom but all your editing apps. So basically Lightroom has many presets. We can directly use them to add as filters into your images, but today we are going to see how to use all these options in Lightroom and make some wonders out of them. So first you have the selective and healing options. These options are available only for the Pro version of Lightroom in your mobile. So if you want the Pro version, you have to pay 320 rupees, I hope 320 per month. So I'm not going to worry about that. So the third option we have is the crop button. The main thing that everyone should have in mind is if the photograph which you have now imported to Lightroom has a horizon in it, like you have a line that separates something like the sky and the floor. See, in this image we have the floor and the sky being separated by a horizon. So I call this line as a horizon, which makes a difference in the image. So we have to make sure that the horizon is totally straight. If your horizon is slightly tilted, it actually looks odd. Or if you are making a composition with your horizon, like if you are making a horizon as a diagonal in your frame, that's a different perspective. But here, if it's not straight in a picture, you have to make sure that the horizon is straight. The crop option helps us to change the horizon. We can also have a symmetric horizon or even an asymmetric horizon. That's not the matter, but it's based on the photograph that actually speaks. So here in this picture the horizon is not symmetric, yet it has to be horizontal so that it doesn't look odd. So the crop option has a slider to move your image, where you can slide and rotate your image. So this helps to position your horizon such that the image looks good. So now I am saving it. And one more thing, the main option of using the crop is to actually crop your image. So don't hesitate to crop your image. If you want the subject to be good, you can go ahead and crop your image, because that really makes a difference. So you have these four corners which helps to crop your images. So we can move to the next option. So the next you have these filters that we are not going to see, because if we just select them we can use them. So I'm not interested in that. So I'm coming back. And you have the auto mode here, where Lightroom detects everything from your image and provides default contrast values, highlight values, or every other settings automatically, and provides you with an automatic edit of an image. So that's actually not recommended if you are trying to learn with Lightroom. So the next thing or the next option you have is the light button. So if I click on the light option, you have many sub options within it, like exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites and blacks. So first we can see what is an exposure. So what is an exposure? Exposure is the amount of light you have on your image. So there is a slider here which helps us to add light or darken your image. There may be times when you just are shooting something indoor where you have kept your settings in such a way for the indoor lightings, and suddenly you saw something outdoor and you shoot the moment in the outdoor, and then you see that the settings are totally messed up. That is, your image may be overexposed or even underexposed. At those times, this exposure option helps us to bring some lights into the image or even darken your image. So here we have a good exposure, but I will show you how this exposure option turns your image into. So I just raise the exposure. You can see that the image gets a lot of light in it, while if I turn it down, the image gets totally darkened. So that's how exposure helps us to bring some light or darken your image. So the next option we have is the contrast. So many of the people who do editing for even years doesn't know what a contrast means. Contrast is the separation between the darkest and the lightest portions of your image. This contrast slider helps us to increase the contrast and reduce the contrast. So I will show you what a difference it makes while we increase or decrease it. So in this image I am going to increase the contrast, that is I am going to move the slider towards the right. So as you can see, the darker and the lighter area in the images are separated, while if I move the contrast to the left, totally to the left, the darker areas and the brighter areas in the image gets blend with each other, so that it won't. I hope the audio would suck a lot today. By reducing the contrast, that is moving the slider towards the left, you could see that the darker areas and brighter areas in the image just blends to each other, so that there is no much difference between them in the image. So contrast is actually used for this purpose. So you have to choose your contrast in such a way that it doesn't look odd and it doesn't stand out too much. That is, the darker areas should not stand out too much because it would look very odd. So the third thing you have in the lights panel is the highlights slider. Generally, highlights are the brightest spots in your images. As you could see, even my skin tone, you have some harsh lights on my face, right? So, and also this light here. So this light occurs here due to the window that is straight towards me, and the light is falling directly on me and also on the cupboard. So this is actually a highlight. I don't know whether it would appear after editing my footage, but this one is actually a highlight because this is the brightest spot in this frame. So this is the highlight, and even in all your photograph you will have some places where it's totally blown out, you will have too much of brightness, and that's where this highlight slider helps you. So if you reduce it totally, you will get those brightness reduced. That is, even in my face I have that too much of harsh light, right? So this will be reduced with the help of this highlights. In this image you could see that there is too much of bright spots in this image which can be reduced. That is, their brightness can be reduced with the help of this highlights. So by reducing this, I got a little bit of blue tint in this image which helps me to bring the skies in this image. In same way, you can also bring skies into your images, like you can at least bring a little bit of blue tone in your images by reducing the highlights and increasing the blue color in your image. Move the slider towards the right, and by that you can bring little more light to the highlighted portions of your frame. So the next one you have is the shadows. So the name itself says it, like what is shadows actually used for. So if you have less shadows in your image, you can just bring them back. You can add more shadows by moving your slider towards the left. And if you want your shadows to go away, that is, you want more light in the place where you have shadows, you can move the slider towards the right. So you could see what a kind of difference that makes in this image. So the shadow slider helps us with this. So I want shadows in this image, so I'm moving it towards the left. So the next two sliders are very easy. You can see that whites and blacks. So just if you want to make the whites in your image a little more white, you can move the slider towards the right, and if you want to dull it, that is, you want to make your white a little, like, make it dull, you can move your slider towards the left. Here I am moving it towards the left so that the whites will be reduced and I will get a little more sky in this image. And next is the blacks. As the name suggests, if you want to have all the black color things in your image to be little more darker, little more black in color, you can move the black slider towards the left. Or if you want it a little lighter, you don't want a thick black color in your image, you can move it towards your right. So here I am moving it a little bit so that I have a decent black color in my photograph. So the next option we have here is the color tab, where we can play with the temperature, tint, vibrance and saturation. So actually I don't use these four here, that's my personal opinion, but you can easily use them and go ahead with them. Actually I use the two buttons at the top, that is black and white, and the other one is the color mix. So maybe I would use the temperature slider here, that helps us to reduce the temperature or increase the temperature of the image. Like if you have taken an image in the hot sun and it's too harsh, if you want to reduce the temperature, you can reduce the temperature by moving the slider towards the left, which brings a cool effect on the image, as you could see here. Or if your image is too dull and you want to bring some warm feel in it, you can move the slider to the right and you can get a lot of warmness in your image. Tint is the next option which is available here. Tint is actually bringing a tone to your image. If you move the slider towards the right, you will get a purple kind of tone in your image, and if you are moving towards the left, you will get a greenish tone in your image. I generally not prefer using the tint because I would love to play with colors. The next two options we have here is the vibrance and saturation. So we can see the saturation. We can see the saturation first. We can see the saturation first so that you will get a better understanding of the vibrance as well. So we have the saturation. It's very hard to pronounce that. So now let's play with the saturation slider. I am moving it towards the right. So as you could see, I get a very saturated image. The colors are very high. But if I move it towards the left, you would get a kind of black and white kind of image. That is the main thing that saturation actually helps in. So what is the difference between saturation and vibrance? So for that I have to go to another image and explain you the same. So I have an image of a guy here. So I will explain saturation and vibrance, the difference between them with the help of this image. It's actually a portrait. So I am going to the color tab here. What a kind of difference saturation makes to your image and vibrance make to your image. So we will see that. So in this image I am adding the saturation towards the right. I am moving the slider towards the right. So as you could see that not only the background of the image but also the skin tone of the person also get more colored. So like its color is very high, right? So now let's reduce the saturation to 0 as it was. So now I'm going to increase the vibrance to the right. So have you found a little bit of difference in this image from when you increase the saturation? Here even this, the skin tone is getting increased but it has maintained its limit. So first when we increase the saturation, every single thing in the image got more color, that is yellow is getting more yellow in color, green is getting more green in color, and purple is getting more purple in color. while if I reduce the saturation to 0, if we increase the vibrance, the skin tone is maintained to a good amount, but the background is highly colored. So the background is more colorful while the skin tone is maintained. So this is the difference between saturation and vibrance. Saturation makes your image, the total image, more colorful, while vibrance helps you to maintain the skin tone but makes your background and other things on the frame more colorful. So this is the difference. So this will be very helpful to you when you are doing portrait photography, where you want more colors to your background. Maintaining the skin tone, vibrance is really going to help you a lot. So these are the 4 options, 4 sliders available here, but we have 2 more buttons at the top, which is the black and white button and the color button. So if you click on the black and white button, it gives a monochrome image of the photograph. So if you want a monochrome image of your photograph, you can directly go to the color tab, click on the black and white button. Or if you want to play with colors, all the colors in your frame, this mix button is really going to help a lot. So in this image there is a lot of greens here, so I'm going to the mix tab and select the green icon here. So we can change this color green to even a blue in color. So here the hue slider helps with that. So to the left you could see that it's little bit of yellowish, while towards the right it's little bit of ocean blue color. So if I move towards the left, the greens have turned a little bit of yellowish. So now I am changing the mix to the yellow color. So when I move this hue slider, the yellows in this frame is gonna change. So when I move the hue slider towards the left, see the yellow, it's getting a little more brownish in color. So that's how we can change a color in your frame to totally a different color with the help of this color mix tab in your Lightroom. So here I am keeping this a little bit brown, and I am also going to increase the saturation here. So the third slider here is the luminance, which is actually the intensity of your colors. So the luminance slider helps us to bring a pop kind of effect in your image. So if you want this yellow to pop a little out of the image, you can just move the slider towards the left. So you will get a more intense yellow here, and if you want that not to pop, or if you want those yellows to be subtle, you can move the luminance towards the right. So by this you can bring a little bit of pop effect in your image. So I'm keeping the luminance a little bit towards the left, so we need the skies here. So I'm going to play with the blues. So we have a light tint of blue here, so to bring a little more blue, I'm going back and reducing the temperature so that I will have a little bit of blue in my frame. So we have got a little bit of blue in our frame. So now I'm going back again into the mix tone and I'm going to play with this blue. So first we are going to increase the saturation and see how this brings a change in the image. I'm going to adjust the hue in such a way that it looks like a real sky. So that's all. I have brought skies into my frame. I have brought skies from nowhere into my image with the help of Lightroom. So now let's move to the next option we have, that is effects tab. In effects tab you have too many options like grain amount, roughness, highness, roundness, feather, midpoint, virginate, dehaze and all. So to know the basics, you don't need all of them. Maybe I would share some of the important things that may help you. One thing that helps you here is the clarity slider. So if you want a little more clarity to your image, you can move the clarity slider towards the right. Don't move it towards 100. Just keep a little bit. A little bit is enough, because a little bit just makes a difference. So I'll generally keep my clarity around 10 or something, so it gives a little pop feel in your image. And if you also see, if you lower down the clarity towards the left, the image gets more soft, and as you see, the total image looks like a painting kind of feel, right? So don't move it towards the left or right. So the next thing that would help you in this effects tab is the Virginate option. The Virginate option is used to bring dark corners to your frame, so you can also add white corners or black corners. So I'll show you the Virginate slider. If I move it towards the right, you could see the corners are getting more whitened, and if I move it towards the left, you could see that the corners are getting more darker. So other things in the effects tab are a little bit complicated, so we don't want that in this video, as this is a basic tutorial. We'll go with the next thing. We have a split tone button here, so this helps you a lot. Split tone, you have two options here, highlights and shadows, and also a balance slider is there to help you balance the lights and colors. So highlights, and you have a color palette here. So when you don't have colors, or when your sky is blown out, you can use this highlight slider and bring that blue tint into your highlighted spots, and it looks like a sky. And the same goes with the shadows color picker. You can bring colors to all the shadows in your image, and this balance slider is used to balance between the highlights and the shadows. So the split tone helps us to bring colors to your highlights and shadows. So the next thing you have here is detailing. If you have less details in your image, you can go ahead and sharpen your image with the help of this sharpening slider. There are many sliders here which we don't need them now. This is a basic tutorial, so sharpening is enough. So this sharpening slider, as its name says, gives little more sharpness to your images. So the next thing we have is optics tab. That is also not required for a basic tutorial. So the next other thing you have is perspective fixing. That is available only in pro mode, so we also don't need that. So that's it. I have covered all the basics you should know while you are editing your images in Lightroom or even in any other app. This helps you to bring a lot of colors into your image. It would even make a worst image to a wow image. So now I hope you got an idea of all the basics of Lightroom editing, or even any other app. These basics are gonna help you a lot when you edit your photographs. So you can use apps like Lightroom and Snapseed for your editing in mobile, and for editing in PCs you can go ahead with Lightroom and Photoshop. So please do comment. It really takes a lot of time to do these kind of videos. Please do comment your views. Please do tell your reviews to me so that I can improve myself in my upcoming videos. What else? If you are a new viewer, do subscribe my channel. The button will be somewhere below. And if you want more kind of tutorials and short videos, do follow me on Instagram at girish.kario. And if you like this video, do give a thumbs up. That would really make a difference. And that's it for the day. It was a long session today. I hope you learned something new today. Thanks for watching all my videos. Do support me, guys. So we'll meet in another video. Until then, it's your Kario signing off.